Hey guys, AscendantGod here with Raid Shadow Legends. Going to be covering the new content coming out in patch 1.13.5. Some things that I have some issues with here, my personal stance on the game, direction it's headed. So for those who haven't seen it yet, I posted a couple videos of me opening Void Shards and Ancient Shards recently. I actually got what for most would be some really good pulls, and statistically I beat the odds on pulling legendaries in them. However, some people made some really good points on me not being excited about pulling things that a lot of people would absolutely die for in this game. And the reason I'm going to point this out is, I felt it was long overdue to discuss my personal stance on the game, why I felt the way that I did with those shards, why I keep playing, and how I feel about the direction the game's headed with 1.13.5. Now to start, with patch 1.13.5 here, as you can see, we have more champions coming into the game from the login rewards here. So now 120, 150 day, 180 day login rewards here that we're getting. And so scrolling down here, I'm going to cover the first one, and we have a new barbarian here. It's a legendary Seal of the Drakes, and she seems like a fairly decent legendary. Not God broken, of course, since they're giving her away for the login, but they'd never hand any of them out, of course. But it's still a pretty solid champion. She has a passive here that heals all allies by 10% of their max hit points at the start of each turn. Paired up with hit point champions, this could be very powerful. And the 30% increase in speed on a random ally is also huge. If it targets the right champion of yours that's particularly powerful, you need their abilities. So that passive makes her a very formidable legendary in and of itself, particularly in longer battles where those speed buffs are adding up, the healing is adding up. Going to be very powerful for that. Her A3 is really decent here as well. It's a revive. It not only does revive an ally with 50% of their hit points, but it puts a 50% ally protection on them for 2 turns. So it's not exactly one of the best resurrection abilities I've seen, but between that and her passive here that gives the heal and the speed buffs, she seems more like a support champion to me than a defense champion that she's listed in as the type up here. But she's going to really help out with keeping your team up and alive, for sure. Her A2 here is an AoE that has a chance to stun enemies for a turn. Since she hits with it twice, she will be helping to keep your allies not only alive by healing and the revive abilities that she has, but by stunning the enemies as well to keep you from taking incoming damage. Now, again, her A2 here is also a pretty decent ability. The big question with it currently is how well it will scale. So we won't see about that until the patch goes live, but you also have to keep into consideration, since she is a defense-based champion, her attacks should all be scaling off of defense most likely, which means that you can load her up with a bunch of defense to keep her alive with this ally protection, and yet make her also hit harder with this A2 and the A1. Now, her A1 does have a pretty decent skill here too. It's a chance to place a decreased speed debuff on the target for 2 turns, plus it also has a chance to decrease their turn meter. Now this will pair great with a counterattack composition where she's doing a lot of this A1 against enemies for counterattacks. That could be really, really good. So she could pair well with one of them. Personally, I can tell you right now that I have been debating on who to change up in my barbarian team as far as faction wars to make it more powerful. I already know I'm going to be using her for that. I have Valkyrie, so I'm going to pair her up with a counterattack champion, and it's definitely going to make her brutal in faction wars. I don't see myself using her for anything else other than that, but she'll definitely be an amazing champion for most faction wars compositions. Even if you don't have Valkyrie, she should be a pretty solid champion for most dungeons other than Fire Knight's Castle and Spider. Since she does have that random speed increase, I don't see her as particularly good for endgame clan boss, for Ultra Nightmares, since it will throw off your counterattack rotations, of course. I also don't see her as particularly amazing for endgame arena, but for those still building their way up in silver or gold arena, she could definitely be an upgrade for sure. Altogether, they are going to be handing us a pretty powerful legendary here, so I'm looking forward to getting her. The next one is an epic, Lordly Legionary. He has an A3 that does a reflect damage, a continuous heal, That's pretty decent for an epic. His A2 doesn't seem that great, maybe for bosses, but that's about it. It's a single target that can place a decreased speed and decreased turn meter. If it was an AoE, that would be great, but for a single target, it's just merely okay for bosses. That's about it. And his A1 here is intended to be paired with someone that has a heal reduction. Apparently, if the target has a heal reduction debuff, it can place either 1 or 2 more extra hits, depending on if that debuff is a 50% or 100% heal reduction debuff. Depending on how well this scales, it could be pretty handy, but he's not anything that amazing. Since it is Bannerlords, though, and Bannerlords I feel like is one of the factions that are kind of lacking, he might be an upgrade for some people as far as faction wars. I don't know if I'll be using him personally, but he does seem okay for faction wars. And then overall, though, I mean, he's not one that you're going to tend to see much in the end game content. He's okay for an epic, decent for mid game, but nothing that makes him particularly spectacular. With Dark Elhain here, this seems like it might be a different story. It's another remake of an already existing champion in the game who was Elhain, but with a darker look and feel to her. To start, she has 2 different passives here. One of them instantly removes any freeze debuffs on her, and it replaces them with a 30% increased crit rate, 30% increased crit damage buff, and a 15% strengthen buff. So that is pretty wow, especially for an epic. And the second passive she has here works along with it, where whenever the second passive has her filler turn meter by 25%, instantly activates her A2 here, Death's Magistry, whenever her or an ally gets frozen. So she seems like she could be a counter to Tormund. A big part of how good of a counter she will be depends on how hard her A2 will hit. Her A2 here places a 50% increased attack on her, and then it attacks all enemies. Also has a chance to put a decreased speed debuff on all of the enemies. So it's going to slow the enemies, going to do damage to them. It's pretty interesting. Definitely relevant to endgame content. Again, depends on how well she scales. Her A1 is a 1 target hit that decreases that target's max hit points by 30% of the damage inflicted. Nothing spectacular there, but the rest of her abilities seem really solid as a freeze counter. We might end up seeing her in endgame content, possibly even in Platinum Arena, but again, we will have to see how well she scales. Now, I find it quite ironic that in the next section here, it's labeled balance, when it's instead going to do the exact opposite. The new Platinum tier rewards here, they mentioned this a while back. Us content creators, as well as all you players, or the majority of you players, I should say, all warned them this was going to be a train wreck, but like usual, they ignored all of us and they're moving forward with it. One of the things the new rewards will offer is avatars, as you can see up here. That's a cool concept, and that I actually think is a good idea, as it gives people incentive to play Platinum, but it doesn't cause issues with balancing. The new sets, though, are just absolutely absurd, especially this Swift Parry set here. This one offers 18% increased speed, 30% increase damage, chance to get a 50% chance to get an unkillable turn when the champion's hit with a fatal hit. So now we're essentially going to have a bunch of random, unpredictable skull crowns popping up in Platinum on any kind of random number of champions because of these gear sets. To include an unkillable buff like that in a gear set is an absolutely horrible idea, in my opinion. It's bad enough that the compositions in Platinum tend to already be God-broken compositions as it is, but now you're going to give them God-broken gear on top of that? I mean, are you kidding me? The deflection set isn't quite as bad, but it is broken as well. 20% hit points, 20% defense, chance to get a deflect debuff onto an attacker when a debuff is placed on the wearer. So it basically just puts the debuff on the champion placing it instead of yourself. Now, both hit point and defense on champions like Duchess or Siphi is going to be insane as it is. And then 1 in 4 debuffs are going to be deflected back onto you. I mean, what were they thinking when they made this, really? I mean, you get 20% hit points and 20% defense in a 4-piece set. That blows the other sets that give the 15% with a 2-piece out the water. I mean, because it gives both. I mean, that's... And then this chance to deflect. It's not nearly as bad as this Swift Parry set, but that's also a really powerful set as well. Now, I'm not going to touch on the issues with Arena just yet, just to finish up here. They are increasing the potion drops in dungeons, which is fairly nice. I have so many of my Faction War champions that can't even wear an amulet or banner because I can't justify wasting energy farming for potions for Faction Wars when I still need better gear from Platinum. And especially with the new God-Broken sets coming out for Platinum, Arena is going to get far more competitive. So personally, I'm not going to be wasting my time for a long time farming dungeons other than Fire Knight's Castle. But it is nice that they finally listened for a change and such are upping the drop rates for the potions for the dungeons. So that is nice to see. Other than that, as you can see here, the speed hack's getting fixed. There's a fix for the AI for Septimus, which I know people have been complaining about for a while. And they are resetting ratings for certain champions that they've made significant champion balances with, but who really cares that much about that with everything else that I feel there's far more important things that they need to focus on. Their priorities just seem to be elsewhere. I find it quite unsurprising that the very first comment below here highlights the issue that I've brought up to Plarium, as well as a lot of other players have countless times now, about the severe shortage of counterattack champions in the game as it is. And I know so many players that have quit the game because they couldn't handle Ultra Nightmare simply because they didn't have a counterattack champion. And Plarium just keeps watering down the counterattack champions by adding more and more champions in the game, many of which are fairly irrelevant to endgame content. We keep telling them we don't care about more champions. We care more about the balancing of the current ones. They keep pumping out more and more champions. They pump out far more champions than champions that they balance. Every once in a while we get balances, but proportionately they're putting out more champions than they're balancing, which is making the balancing worse. So the balancing is nice, but overall the champions are still horribly imbalanced. And again, we're going to touch on this more when I look at Platinum in just a minute here. To make my point, pretty soon Platinum's going to offer the absolute best rewards artifact wise in the game to the Platinum players. I mean, Platinum is probably the most broken part of the game. I mean, looking through the list here of the players in Platinum and their compositions, you can see clearly why. There's only certain champions that are so powerful that you see over and over here. In Platinum, we see the same God-broken champions over and over. Duchess is one of the biggest ones, the fairly new Siphi, the fairly new Rhodos. You see Krisk a lot here, you see Ceres a lot. I mean, since they buffed him, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but his provokes now, or Angar, I think his name is maybe, or whatever. He's insane. I mean, her, oh my God, she is really broken. And again, I have, what is her name? Trunda. And Hegemon, I mean, don't even get me started on Hegemon, but you see the same champions over and over again. Ceres, Siphi, Rhodos, Duchess, Hegemon, Arbiter, of course, Skullcrown, of course, Krisk. I mean, a lot of these, Ray, not quite as God-broken, but pretty God-broken. And you see the same ones over and over and over again. And it's because they are God-broken. And it's a huge no in this industry to break your own game's mechanics. When they made Hegemon breaking the mechanics of the speed in Arena, I'm not going to get started on that. But anyway, I mean, you go down this list, you see clear as day the imbalances, what champions are God-broken for Arena, and they just appear in this list again and again and again. And there are a few more as well as the ones that I already mentioned, but the main ones that I just mentioned previously, those are the ones that are probably some of the very, very top God-broken ones in this list. But like I said, you can look in Platinum yourself. You're going to see the same champions over and over and over that are ridiculously powerful here. And Platinum has very little to do with skill, and more than anything has to do with having spent enough money to pull the God-broken champions, or in some rarer cases, people lucked out and pulled them without spending thousands of dollars. Regardless, this is one of my biggest issues personally with the game in its current state. In the past, I was used to playing games that were based on skill. The people who did the most damage or won the most encounters were the ones who were the most skilled. With Raid Shadow Legends, the majority of it is based on what you've bought. If you have Duchess, Rhodos, Siphi, and Ceres, and meanwhile you're going up against a free-to-play player who only has, say, Arbiter, Tyrell, Skullcrown, and Molly, there's no contest there. No matter how skilled that free-to-play player is, they will never be able to take on that whale who bought the right champions. I know some people, like this type of game. They like the gambling type of unpredictability. They like investing into something where the more they spend, the closer they get to being at the top. There are some aspects of this game I really like, which is why I still play it. But personally, the part I dislike the most is the champion imbalances that make it more than anything about who spent the most or lucked out on pulling the God-broken champions. Now, I have a couple of the really powerful champions, but I still haven't pulled a Duchess, I haven't pulled a Siphi, Hegemon, Krisk, Trunda, or any of those other God-broken champions that you couldn't earn for Platinum. The ones that you could earn, I got Tormund, I earned him. I got Rhodos, I earned him. Yeah, other than that, of course, I earned my Arbiter, although I'm working on trying to transition her out of my group. I pulled a couple of Skull Crowns. I only use one of them right now for it, but I have a couple of them with some pretty hefty gear on them. So anyway, but there's some of them that I just haven't pulled yet. I mean, yes, Rhodos is great, but with Siphi, he's unstoppable. She removes that, like, even if he gets killed and he's unresurrectable, she removes it, pulls him back. Like, that shouldn't be happening. But anyway, that's a whole different story. This ties directly into my prior videos with the shard pulls, though. I have some pretty solid champions already, like I said, and there are very few that would actually be upgrades compared to what I already have. Again, things like Duchess, Siphi, Krisk, Hegemon. So sure, I have pulled some decent legendaries from shards lately, some really decent legendaries. Like, say, for example, one of the newest ones was Mountain King. And yes, I am kind of excited about him. I'm going to max out his level. I'm not going to max out his skills because it's just too costly. And since I'm not going to use him for any part of the game other than Faction Wars, I don't see a point. But he's decent for Arena, but Trunda just blows him out the water. But the thing is here is like, after a while, you get to this point where you're just like, I just pulled X $100 worth of shards, yet I still struggle in Arena because I haven't pulled one of the God-broken champions yet. And I guess it would be different if I was rich and had tons of extra cash to throw around. But the thing is that I have a family to provide for. And, when you don't have tons of extra money to throw towards this game, and the only reason you struggle in things like, say, Arena is because of imbalances that Plarium refuses to fix, after a while, you do get jaded. And I don't want to walk away because I do see a lot of potential in this game. However, balance issues is one of the biggest issues with this upcoming patch. And that new gear that's going to be coming into play here, it's only going to get worse with this. Not going to get better, it's going to get worse. And now I'm sure that some of the people who do have the God-broken compositions for Platinum, they're very excited. Your thoughts and feelings on this patch is really going to depend on if you are able to compete in Platinum currently, or if you aren't able to, or if you struggle in it, of course, like I do. And for those of us like myself who do struggle in it, it's only going to get worse, as it's going to get more competitive. The only way you can compensate even the least bit is to farm artifacts and hoping that you can get the sets that help you. And even then, there's no artifacts that can compensate for not having the right champions with the right skills and kit. And anyway, after opening up a ton of shards and not getting Siphi the other day, just days later, Plarium ran another event for ancient shards. I opened up those, and again, hundreds of dollars worth of shards, all to fail in pulling anything I can actually use in Arena, which is really all that I need at this point for endgame. If I got to the point where I could compete in Platinum, then sure, I would have been more excited to pull Mountain King, and I would have been more excited to pull, I don't even know who else it was that I pulled. I guess I should pull him out and level him up. There's somebody else here. I think it's maybe this guy here. From what I've heard, he does hit pretty hard. I don't know if I'm even going to use him for Faction Wars. That's the thing. But it's just costs so much to max champions out with their skills, their masteries, and all of that. And and my priority right now is for Platinum Arena, especially with the change coming up. But when you pull hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of shards and you don't get what you want, yeah, it's a little frustrating, even if you pull really good champions. I know my pulls beat the odds. I know Mountain King is Platinum material. I know he is a really, really good champion. He hits ridiculously hard. But like I said, he's nothing compared to Trunda. Trunda is insane. She stuns. She can one-shot entire enemy teams if they lack the right champions to counter her massive AoE and stuns. Mountain King just doesn't fit in my current Platinum composition. He doesn't bring enough to the table. Yes, he's great, but he's not great enough for me. More than anything, though, I think I take this game too seriously. And I'm just giving my feedback for those of you out there who might be frustrated like me. You're in a similar situation where you're like, man, I really feel like this game's going downhill, or man, I've just really been frustrated with the game lately. I don't know exactly why. I don't know what to do to be happy with the game again, but I don't want to quit because I have invested so much in it already. Let me just give you a little bit of my personal insight to maybe hopefully help some of you. When I played World of Warcraft back in the day, I was one of the world's top DPS affliction warlocks. Literally, I raised the bar, broke numerous records. I even had interviews with Blizzard wanting to do interviews with me about how I was doing what I was doing and giving insider tips. And I earned it through tons of research, refining my macros, and overall effort on my part. I did the same in both StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2. My issue with Raid Shadow Legends currently is that no matter how skilled you are, no matter how much effort you make, at the end of the day, it's mostly about how much you spent combined with lucking out and pulling the right champions. I'm not a gambler. That's my biggest problem. I like games that reward off effort, not off luck. You won't ever catch me in a casino or at any other gambling venue other than Raid Shadow Legends. But I'm going to keep making content. I'm going to keep helping out the people who play this game. I'm simply going to redirect my priorities on other things, just like other content creators do. We know if we don't, we'll just be another content creator that burns out and walks away. If you've been playing this game for, even just 6 months, I'm sure you've seen a couple of the big content creators walk away because they were frustrated Plarium doesn't listen to the customer feedback. I do what I can to voice what I know the majority of my clan wants, the majority of you people out there complain that you want. I do everything I can, guys, trust me, to try to get that out there. But we can't make Plarium change. I don't work for Plarium. The other content creators don't work for Plarium. So, please don't be upset with us, because trust me, we're not happy with the game's current state and the current direction either. There's some things that have been great changes, some things that are really, really good, but overall, it could be a lot better, a lot better. And, the problem too with me is that my aspirations are so much more than helping out people with a game. There's so much more I want to do for society, my family, my friends, and in general. So for those in a similar dilemma with Raid Shadow Legends who are getting frustrated, burnt out, jaded, the best solution I can give you is to not take it too seriously. And if you don't have a huge expendable income, do not invest tons of money into it. It'll only leave you with even more disappointment. Use it for what it is, something that's an escape from everyday life, entertainment. Now, there's so much more I could say here, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. As far as this patch, we will have to wait until it goes live to see how some of the champions will scale and how much more competitive Arena is going to become when those rewards come out. Overall, see how it all impacts the community. And I'm going to do my best to ease back on this game, treat it like a game like I should, and look at it in a more positive light through that process. But for today, that's all that I have, guys. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, time will tell how this content pans out for the new changes, especially the biggest one seems to be the changes for Platinum tier rewards. But we'll see what happens in the patch. So anyway, for now, until the next episode, guys, good luck and take care.